Hello and welcome to the fifth lecture in the Intro to Python video series. In this lecture, we'll be taking a look into functions. A function defines a reusable block of code that performs a specific task. Functions help in organizing code, making it modular, readable, and maintainable. Let's take a look at an example of how functions can be used in Python. So let's write a function to add two numbers. So we'll do something like def add numbers, a comma b, and result equals a plus b, return result. And then you can call this function to get the sum. Add numbers, let's say 5, 3, and then print sum. So as you can see, we're calling the function add numbers with two arguments, 5, 3, and then you get the result into sum, which then you can print. So if we change this to something like 5 and 10, you get the result sum. Let's now try to understand the syntax of a function in Python. So a function definition starts with the keyword def. So this is the keyword used to define a function in Python. This is followed by the actual function name. So this is whatever you want to name your function. Then inside the parentheses, you have the arguments, and the arguments are the input values that the functions take. This is optional, so you can skip this part out. And then in the body, you have the code for the function that you want to execute. And then finally, again, optionally, you can have a return statement that will return the result or whatever you want the function to return. So this is a keyword used to return a value from the function. So going back here, you have the def followed by the name of the function. In this case, it's add two numbers since the function is used for adding two numbers. And this is followed by the two arguments a, b that is used by the function. And inside the function, we have the code that we wanted to execute, followed by a return statement that returns the sum of the two numbers. So once we have a function definition like this, you can then call this function by using its function name, followed by all the arguments that you want to specify, or the value of the arguments that you want to specify. And then since it has a return value, whatever this function returns will be stored into sum, and then you can print or do whatever you want with that value. So we just mentioned that the arguments and the returns are both optional. So let's take a look at a function that doesn't have any arguments or a return statement. So we can start again with the keyword def and followed by a function name. So let's call it print hello. And this will not have any arguments. And in the function, we'll say print hello, and it won't have any return statement either. Now, if we call this function print hello, then as you expect, you'll get hello from the output, which is what this code executes. Let's now take a look into scope of variables. So variables in Python have two types of scope. One is a local scope for local variables, and the other is a global scope. So local variables are the ones that are defined inside a function, and these are only accessible within that function. Global variables, on the other hand, are defined outside the function in like the main process, and these are accessible throughout the code. So let's take a look at an example where we define some variable inside a function. So let's say we have some function def func, and inside this function we define a variable x equals 10, and so this here is a local variable, and let's say we print the value of x. Now if we call the function func, as you expect, you will get 10 here. But now let's try to print the value of x outside the function. And if you run this code, you will see an error saying that x is not defined. And this is happening because x is a function that is local to this variable, and it cannot be accessed outside this function. As soon as this function exits, this variable goes out of scope and is no longer available to be used or accessed. Global variables, on the other hand, can be accessed inside a function. So let's define, again, the same variable. Let's define some other variable, y equals 10. And this over here will be a global variable since it's not defined inside any function. And let's say now again you have a def func. And if inside this function, if you try to print y inside the function, comma y, and let's try to print it outside as well, y outside the function. And let's add a function call to the func function. And you see two outputs. So you can have this statement over here, and y inside the function is 10, even though it's not defined inside the function, this function has access to the global variable y, and here you can print again y outside the function, and they both have values 10. Now it is possible to reuse variable names. So if you have a global variable, you can reuse the same name inside a function, and you can have access to that variable. So let's say you have some z equals 100, and let's say we have another function def_func, and inside this variable you can predefine z to be some other value, 50, and then let's say z, let's print the value, so z inside the function, and z, and let's call this function, and let's also print the value of z that is outside the function, z. So if you run this, you will see that z inside the function is 50, because when you have called this print statement, Python will first look for a local variable with the same name. So here it does find it, so you have z equals 50, and then when it gets out here, it will try to look at the global variable for z, which is 100. So which is why you get z inside the function to be 50 and z outside the function to be 100. Now if you comment out this line, then you will get z inside the function to be 100, and z outside the function will also be 100. Right, now let's take a look at default variables in Python. So functions in Python can have default values for its arguments. We have already seen this in case of range, where the start value has a default value of 0. So let's take a look at a function and see how we can add a default value to its arguments. So let's write a function called greet, where it takes some name, and you want to give it some greeting, and then the function will print the greeting along with the name that you specified. So if you call this function with something like greet Alice with some greeting which is hello, then it will print hello Alice. Now it is possible to have some default value, so the way to specify a default value for an argument is by just doing equal to equals hello. Now if we skip the second argument when you call the function, you will see that you will get still the same output from the function call. Now it is possible to overwrite this default variable, so you can call something like greet Bob and say good morning. And if you run this, you will see that it now prints good morning Bob. Even though greeting has a default value, it now overwrites at what you specify. But if you remove this variable here, it will go to its default value, which is hello. So that brings us to the end of this chapter. See you in the next lesson. Thank you for watching.